I'm Dr. Michelle Hamilton, and welcome to today's episode of It's All Connected. It is said that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Join us as we help you to make the connection between a healthy mind and a healthy body. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this break.
The next person in line, your friend at school or your coworker, may have COVID-19 and not know because they have no symptoms. You, on the other hand, could be hospitalized for 2 months or more if you become infected. Is it worth it? Stay socially connected, but keep the physical distance. Stay 6 feet away and avoid a hospital stay. COVID-19 is not over. Protect yourself while protecting others. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
My name is Dr. Fred Sergil, and I am a general practitioner. My friends, my colleagues, you and I have been given the most awesome and noble privilege to be collaborators with God in the life-saving ministry. This is because of the skills and the knowledge God has blessed us with. As Seventh-day Adventists, we have been made aware that the health message is to be the right arm of the preaching of the gospel. That is to say, the message of salvation will touch the hearts of a much greater number of individuals here in Jamaica and around the world when you and I, the health professionals, we get involved. Because people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. The Adventist Health Professional Association offers us a unique opportunity to bring the message of salvation as a united front in order to enhance the impact of the gospel on a greater and more efficient scale. So, doctors, nurses, medical technologists, phlebotomists, physiotherapists, psychologists, pharmacists, EMTs, and others, once you are a Seventh-day Adventist and you also work in the field of health and wellness, join the Jamaica chapter of Adventist Health Professional Association today and let us unite our forces in order to strengthen the impact of our church on the community. Join us today.
So 2020 began exciting for me, y'all. I was like, yes, I'm finally gonna start my veranda garden. And everything was falling into place. And then the virus hit. But I also had the opportunity to travel, which was only supposed to be for about 3 weeks. I ended up being away from home for 7 months. So all that hard work I put into my garden where it actually started to grow, there was no one here to take care of it. So upon my return, everything was dead. Was I discouraged? Yes. Did I give up in that moment? I surely did. But this morning I woke up and I'm like, I have a second chance to start this thing again. Although the first time it didn't go as planned, today I have that second chance to start again. Today I'm encouraging all of us not to give up. You know, Galatians 6:9 tells us the very thing. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up.
Welcome back. For today, we'll be talking about obesity. Today, we're going to be really addressing a very sensitive topic for a lot of individuals. We understand that most persons will make assumptions about individuals who have increased weight gain. Today, I would like to share with you some information on one of the leading chronic non-communicable disease impacting millions. It is my hope that you'll be able to gain new insights and make the link between a healthy mind and a healthy body. Now, as I stated before, we'll be looking at obesity. And for many persons, they suffer with increased weight gain for a very long period of time. It's taken me a minute to bring up my slides for me also to be able to see what you're seeing on the screen. But I know that it's a very challenging topic, and a lot of persons have a lot of difficulty because of this. And it's not just physical limitations, but also the perception of others. Well, obesity has been a long topic of bias and stigma. Many people still assume that obesity is the individual's fault and solely the result of them eating too much and moving too little. Have you ever been able to talk to a friend and they say, I want to lose some weight. And they say, all you have to do is eat less and move more. Now, there's some truth to that, but for persons who are diagnosed with obesity, it's a little bit more challenging than just that. So, what is obesity? It's a condition characterized by the excess accumulation and storage of fat in the body. The Obesity Medicine Association says that it's a chronic, relapsing, multifactorial, and neurobehavioral disease that results in an increase in body fat, promotes adipose tissue dysfunction, and abnormal fat mass, resulting in adverse metabolic, biochemical, and psychosocial health consequences. These are big words. So, based on these words, it tells you that it's not about eating so much. It's much more connected than that to understand obesity in itself. So, this fat that we talk about, if you look on the screen, you'll see they're actually called adipocytes, right? They can be gained but not lost, right? These also convert from energy into fat, right? So we have to be careful when we think about the things that we eat when it says this is a fatty food, right? So how is this important? Well, because we say that obesity is multifactorial, it's really a problem that is linked with genetics, behavior, and or environment. There's a lot of things that go into the problem of individuals who are diagnosed with obesity. One of the things that we know and we can see for sure is genetics. You see a family and most of them, the body size is roughly about the same over a period of time. But we do know that our environment or behavior also contributes to this. So we're not discounting that in any way. But what are some of the risk factors with relationship to obesity? Well, for persons who are obese, they increase their chances of being diagnosed with hypertension, coronary artery disease, elevated cholesterol levels, type 2 diabetes, joint disease such as rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis, gallbladder disease, stomach and colon diseases, as well as even cancer. They even will have sleep apnea, very common when persons have this increased weight gain, sleep apnea, respiratory problems as well, and a lot of inflammation also follows that. So, how do you know if you're obese? Because, you may not look obese to others based on your height and your body size. Well, we have what is called the body mass index. And pretty much that is just taking your weight and dividing it by your height, as you can see on the screen. Now, for you to be able to calculate this, you can Google online, put in that number, and you'll be able to get your score. So what does the score mean? So if you're underweight, you're going to score less than 18.5. If you see the scale on the BMI, 18.5. If you are at a healthy weight, you're going to be between 18.5 to 24.9. If you're overweight, and this is where the danger comes, you're going to be at 25 to 29.9. And if you're class 1 obesity, you're at 30 to 34.9. If you're severely obese, which is class 2, you're going to be ranged at 35 to 39.9. And if you're at morbid obesity, which is class 3, you're at 40 to 49.9. So we don't want to go to the next one. That is super obese, and you can know what range that starts from, and that is exceeding 50. So go online and try to figure out your BMI to see where you fall. We also know that it's a bit different in terms of the normal weight for men and women in terms of your BMI calculation. So you can find calendars that will show you that difference as well. But in essence, we do know that there's calories and exercise plays a role, but as I say, it's multifactorial, and we're going to go a little bit deeper. So some information for you, if you look at the screen, it gives you some calculations. So it says that there's at least 1 pound of fat in terms of calories. There's at least 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. And average calorie per hour in terms of exercise that you take to burn, it's 150 to 200. So can you imagine if you exercise for half an hour, you're only burning anywhere between 150 to 200 calories. So think about it, a pound of fat, 3,500 calories, and you have to exercise for half an hour only to burn anywhere between 100 to 200 calories, right? So the estimated time needed to burn a pound of fat is 8 to 12 hours. Who exercises that much? So you can see for individuals who are obese and telling them that, you just need to eat less and move more, it's a little bit more complex than that, because you yourself, you may not fall in that BMI to be obese or slightly overweight. But I'm sure that if you try to lose weight, you will realize that, it takes a lot of effort, and most times the meal that you will eat, you'll feel hungry still because your energy level is still so high, and you don't feel full, so you need to actually eat more. But then it's actually what you eat. So each week we present a case to you, and the case for this week will be presented by Elder Theodore Henry.
So here's the story. You have this gentleman. His name is Jerubbaal, but nobody really knows him by the name Jerubbaal. They know him by the name Gideon. Now, Gideon was he wasn't necessarily an important man, but he was a good man, a man that had God's regard. He was considered to be a hero in Israel. His family, they weren't holding any leadership positions. They weren't princes or any other important people, but they had a reputation for courage. Now, Gideon lived in this time when, the children of Israel were severely oppressed by many of the countries that lived around them. It was their fault. Again, they had fallen into idolatry. But let me continue with the story. So Gideon, because of the oppression around him, you had a field of grapes, a field of wheat, a field of whatever. As soon as it became ripe, in came the army. And all the stuff was gone. So Gideon, one night, we find Gideon hiding away. Not threshing the wheat in the normal place where everyone could see him and know that, Gideon has wheat. But threshing the wheat in a secret place so no one could see. And Gideon, in his secret threshing, gets a visitor. Now, the point of him threshing in the secret place was not to have visitors, but you can't hide from God when you're his people. So Gideon gets a visitor, and immediately he knows that this person is not just any normal person. And the person comes to him and he addresses him and he says, Gideon, the mighty man, God is with you. Now, anyone who is going through stuff sometimes asks themselves the question, if God is with me, why am I going through these things? That was the question Gideon had. But the messenger still reiterated, God is with you. Not only did he come to say God is with you, he came to give Gideon an assignment. You, Gideon, are going to lead God's people in breaking the hold of these pagan people on the Israelites. Gideon had many questions. He wanted to know that God was with him. Like many people today, wouldn't it be nice if God could just knock on your window and say, hey, I'm here? Well, Gideon wanted to know that anything that he did, God would be a part of it. And so he tested God in a good way. Sometimes you have to put things to the test. Sometimes you have to ask God, show me that you're here. All right, so after going through these tests, Gideon finally had all the answers that he wanted. He was sure that God had called him. He was sure that God would bring him through. Now it was time to gather the soldiers of Israel. Gather them he did. Gideon had over 30,000 people with him. But still, compared to the enemy that they had to face, it seemed like a drop in the bucket. 30,000 against hundreds of thousands. But Gideon knew that God was with him, so he still went to the battle because God had chosen him. Now, Gideon arrives at the staging area of the battle. This is where you set up. So you have the enemy there and you have Gideon here. They're aware of each other. They know that they're there. Gideon's people can look down and they see what they're up against. It's not very heartening. The struggle seems large. The struggle seems impossible. And then God says something strange to Gideon. God doesn't say to Gideon that, oh, Gideon, maybe we should get some more men. That seems like what would be the prescription for a problem like this. You have less, they have more, you need more. Instead, God says to Gideon, Gideon, you have too much men. Now, I can imagine Gideon's face, and I can imagine Gideon's heart. What do you mean I have too much men? I don't even have enough. But still, God told Gideon, send home anyone who is afraid or who feels any sort of reluctance to go down to the battle. So, Gideon did what God said. Anyone who's afraid, anyone who doesn't want to go down to the battle, anyone who is here and not sure of what they're doing, it's okay. You can go home. So many left. In fact, 3/4 of Gideon's army left. Now, I am not here to do math, so I won't tell you 3/4 of more than 30,000. I won't tell you what that is. But Gideon was left with just a fraction of his army. And Gideon, I can imagine, still walking in the confidence that God had called him, is now feeling a little anxious. So he's waiting on the call from God. Go forth, conquer. I don't know how my God voice is, but instead of that call to go and conquer, God says instead, Gideon, you still have too much men. Less than a quarter of the army remained, and he still had too much men. God proposed a test for Gideon. He said, okay, Gideon, this is how we're going to do it. Since we've already asked those who are fearful to leave, let's do it this way. Bring all your soldiers down to the brook for a drink of water. And those who lap the water like a dog, well, in fact, watch those who lap the water like a dog. Now, this means that they didn't, get comfortable or anything like that. They just went down. And if you've ever seen one of those dogs drink water when they're a little worried that something is around them, they drink it with haste. So watch for those who do that. And watch for another set of people who, they go down, get comfortable, bring the water to their mouths, fill their stomachs. Gideon did this. Of the number that remained, of the number that lapped the water like a dog, in haste, in alertness, only 300 remained. And finally, God said, you have enough. God was making sure that Gideon had just the right number. Moving on with the story. So, Gideon and his 300. Gideon was afraid at this point. And God said, listen, the 300 is enough. Have I not told you? In fact, if you feel a little worried about this, go down to the Midianite camp. Because these were who they were fighting against, the Midianites. Go down to the camp. Gideon creeps down to the camp, taking his manservant, creeping slowly. He's in the bush, right at the edge of the camp, just where the light stops. And Gideon arrives just in time to hear two soldiers speaking. Soldier 1, I had a dream the other night. Weird dream, super weird dream. I saw this loaf of bread, like a barley loaf, and it rolled down the hill into the camp. Now, the loaf of bread hit a tent, and it lay down the tent flat, flat, flat. What could a dream like that mean? Soldier 2, you know what that means? That means that God has given the whole Midianite host into the hand of Gideon. What a story to hear. Right on the edge of the camp, Gideon heard his enemies predicting his victory. Now, with courage in his arm and the fire of the Lord burning in his chest, Gideon went back to his soldiers, outfitted them, not necessarily with swords at the time. That wasn't their most important equipment. They already had the first most important equipment, faith in God. What next he gave them was a trumpet and a little lantern holding fire. And Gideon positioned his men at different points around the camp, and he said, at my signal, shout loud, blow on your trumpets, break the lanterns. And they did this. The Midianites, when they heard this noise coming from there, coming from there, coming from there, they got up in a panic and they started running away. Not only were they running away, when they looked and they saw someone over there running towards them, they thought it was an enemy soldier, and so they attacked. When they saw someone else looking at them, they thought it was an enemy soldier, so they attacked. The Midianites were carrying out a war entirely against themselves. Gideon and his soldiers swept into the camp as the Midianites were put to flight. They chased them all the way out of the country. They were hungry, they were tired, but they kept up the chase. Eventually, Gideon called the other men who had already gone home and said, "Come and help us win this victory." And everyone knew at that point that it was not Gideon and 300 against hundreds of thousands. It was God, and God alone, that gave them the victory.
Now, the story that you just listened to, I want to assure you that in confidence we did get permission to share this story. And our HIPAA statement was signed, and you can find it in 2 Timothy 3:16 that says, "All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instructions in righteousness." Now, for those of you who are just joining us, we welcome you. Today we are talking about obesity. And I'm going to ask you right now to click that link, to click and subscribe to this channel so that you are notified whenever we have another episode. Now, it's important for you to understand why we're telling this story and why we use these characters each week as we talk about different conditions. We want to help you to make that connection with your health, with spirituality, with the mind and the body. What's the connection right there? Because a lot of times we read the Bible and we don't see ourselves, and we can get a lot of information of how to help ourselves in different ways, because there's so much more that we can do with medication, but there's things that the medication cannot address. So I want you to be able to find encouragement and answers. You are another level of prescription from the Bible. So our story was told today, as you know, by Elder Theodore Henry. And I want you to tell our viewers, where can they find this story for themselves? Because it's going to be very important for them to go back to it.
All right, thank you, Doc. We're looking at Judges chapter 7. And you can go from 1 to 24 to find the action part of the story.
Okay.
But I would recommend, some more surround reading from like Judges 6.
Okay.
But you find the action in 7, 1 to 24, yes.
Okay. Well, you told, while you were telling that story, I could just see persons who struggle with weight problems and obesity. I could just see how, they can be really helped, and as well as, some of them would probably be disappointed. So I have some questions. Let's just unpack the actual spiritual side of it from the actual story itself, because we don't want people to make a mistake thinking that we're saying all the soldiers that weren't selected were obese or overweight. But we can see where the challenges that they face, that the same challenges these individuals face in life. So we want to be able to make that connection. So my first question to you, why do you think God instructed Gideon to choose the men with that form of test? Why did you think he chose that method?
Well, you see, the way I look at it, and when I read through the story, and when you made a point about seeing ourselves in the story,
yes,
and that is critical in reading the Bible. You have to think not only of yourself, but think of the people as real people. How do real people approach this? Now, in your mind's eye, think about it. You are on hostile territory. You are facing an enemy army, right? God wanted the men who had a certain mindset.
Yes.
Now, remember, their numbers have been depleted. 3/4 of the army has gone home.
Yes.
And still, God wanted to know who was holding back, who wasn't in the right headspace. Now, imagine what it takes to drink either of the two ways, the test that God gave.
Yes, yes.
Let's start with the going down to the water. Now, when you have a sword strapped onto your hip, and I'm sure some of our pastors could give a better historical analysis of how long the sword was, but for a sword to be effective and not be a knife, it would need to be relatively long.
Yes.
Relatively long, like maybe about that. Now, imagine that strapped to your hip. You have your other equipment there. Now, if the enemy is in front of you, for you to go down to the water and really lap up, you would need to sort of get comfortable. maybe unstrap the sword, loosen up the sandals a little bit, loosen up the breastplate. It wasn't designed for kneeling down and drinking.
Right.
So, on one hand, you had people who got comfortable in the face of the enemy, who let their guard down in the face of the enemy, who were more interested in their comfort, who were more interested in fulfilling their desires. That's what you have on one side. On the other hand, imagine the lapping like a dog now. You get down. Now, we live in Jamaica, right, where you have many dogs on the road.
Yes, yes.
And you see how those dogs eat, and you see how they drink. They get down, and their eyes are out, looking
Yes,
around.
yes.
And the minute you say, the fly gone. The dogs, as we know them, eat and drink in this state of readiness. And so the other set of people, just 300, had a mindset in which there's no unstrapping my sword. I have come to war. There is no loosening my breastplate. The enemy is right there. In fact, I don't have time to be washing my face and wiping off my neck and all of that stuff. Yes, my face is dusty. Yes, I am thirsty. But I am going to drink as quickly as possible and get back to the battle.
Yes.
They were existing in a state of readiness
Yes.
and in a state of faith. There were 300 of them. There were about maybe 10,000 of them left. But these 300 were ready for the fight.
Yes.
They were ready for the fight. We don't see how we're going to win, but I am so ready. I am so ready.
You know, I like how you pinpoint, what the state of man would be in while they were given that task, right? And it kind of brings out quite a bit in that way, which kind of leads into, the readiness that you talked about just by the method of drinking. Yeah. But then, what do you think happened to the soldiers who weren't selected? What do you think, in terms of the moral of the camp of those who weren't selected? Because these were soldiers already prepared, dressed as you gave me a good description.
Yes.
You understand? So what do you think the moral would have been for those men?
For the first set, I think largely they felt relief.
Okay.
Relief to be safe.
Okay.
Sometimes what we want is not the best thing for us. Basically because it's familiar. Now remember, they were going to battle to free their nation after 7 years of oppression, I couldn't plant a cabbage before somebody come and take it away. Right? Leaving my family with scraps. But they were relieved to have been let off, to go back to the old thing that they knew. If Gideon lost, all right, at least I didn't die. But they didn't try, did they? I think the second set would have felt more disappointment. They didn't even realize what their approach to the test meant. Because if Gideon had said to people, listen, if you lap like a dog, you'll be chosen. If you don't, everybody would, try. Remember that this was the set who had claimed there's no fear. This was the last bit. So to be told that you have passed the first test, but you haven't passed the second one, I can imagine they were pretty disappointed. Pretty disappointed. Maybe a little bit upset as well that, they hadn't been selected. But I don't know how many of them thought about what the test revealed about their mindset.
Yes.
Sometimes when you're in your feelings, you don't think about what does this situation mean for me. But maybe a little upset, maybe a little angry, maybe a little dejected.
Yeah. So I like you talk about disappointment and the fact that, some of them probably were relieved. And as we are talking about obesity, some of those same emotions transcend to these individuals. Yeah. And as we said, we're trying to make that connection with persons in the Bible for them to see themselves in different areas and understand. Yeah. So there are times that we know that persons who are obese or overweight, they'll feel discouraged, especially, for example, they want to qualify to go into a certain career and they don't have the body type, for example, like the army. Right? You have to be of a certain body type and weight and all of that, and they can't. But then this is a desire that they have. This is a career that they would like to be in. So the whole selection, and not even that, sometimes in life there are things and experiences that they go through, and just because they weren't able to do it, or just because of people's image of them,
something
they feel like...
Like shopping.
Yes.
Like you go into a store and you're like, oh, man, ain't nothing here can fit me.
So as we look at those emotions, for persons who are obese, they lack a lot of self-esteem. A lot of self-esteem. So they're not necessarily going to be the first persons to volunteer for things, to, always go. There are a few of them who really have, that positive attitude that will just say, listen, I'm not going to make this define me, right? I'm going to be like ready, like those who were selected, right? Because I'm sure that we had men of different size and body form in that, in that army. And some were still ready, as you say, they were in a state of readiness. So it tells me, it tells me that the mindset, irrespective of the body type, the mindset plays a huge part. And I remember that as you talked about that, I'm like, but there's more than one ways we can be obese and have that lack of drive and so forth. From a spiritual level, what do you think about that?
From the spiritual level, to be obese, to be not as, wow. As you were making those comments, I thought about sin. Sin is, now, there's a great deal of research out there about the dangers of obesity. I don't know that any well-thinking scientist or government will say obesity is a great thing, because it's linked to so many different things. Yes. The research is there. And the parallel for me is sin. How it is linked, it is expressed in so many different conditions. We don't speak about sin very often in our daily lives outside of church. But when you really look around you and see all the issues that hold us down, that break us apart, that mess us up, it's linked right back to sin. And sometimes, many things can happen in our approach to sin that deadens our spirit. We may grow comfortable in sin. You mentioned the mindset that some people may have. Some people don't try.
Yes.
Right? This is how I am. I have failed a few times. Now, tell me, you're watching, tell me that you don't know people who have been there and said, I can't do this journey. I can't talk to God because I have failed so many times. This is who I am. Yes. Right? They're not seeing any way out of this condition. You have others who, despite the health challenges, defend it.
Yes.
So we justify what we do and what we are, and oftentimes they're afraid of the challenge, Yes. I think they're afraid of the challenge. So in those ways, we can become spiritually obese, lacking that connection, lacking that mobility, being prone to so many other lifestyle diseases, so to speak, because of this underlying condition. And the thing is, you're still a human being, aren't you?
Yes.
You're still alive.
Yes.
You can largely go about your life.
Yes.
But there is something that limits you.
Yes.
It's the same thing with the spirit. We go to church, we do the things, but because we haven't taken the time to pursue spiritual health,
yes.
and everybody has different challenges.
Yes.
My level of spirituality is different from yours. I'm on a journey, you are on a journey, but we haven't risen to the challenge to bring our spirituality into optimum condition.
Yes.
And this is me speaking from personal experience, by the way. I'm not throwing words. And so you find the reflections there.
Yes.
You find the reflections there.
I really like how you went into that, because you really brought something out. The same emotions that the person will experience who is obese, that lack of courage, or, that consistent thing, I can't, or I'm a failure and I don't deserve. Others have it in different areas, and it's not just the physical obesity, but the spiritual obesity in terms of your spiritual life and the symptoms. Because, you talk about those lifestyle diseases, of which Noah and I, we talked about it earlier, that there are increased risk for hypertension and all of these things. The person who is spiritual obese, you basically will produce the same symptoms too.
Increased risk of temptation.
Yes.
Everybody is tempted,
Yes.
But when your spiritual muscle not strong,
yes.
the temptations roll over you, Again,
yes.
Personal experience.
Okay. I really just like how you just unpack that one. So, for persons who are obese, as I said before, we want them to understand that it is not just what you eat, right? It's the state of your mind. We understand that genetically they can be more predisposed for weight gain. And it encounters so much more why they have a difficulty losing the weight. It can be from environmental stuff, toxins. It's such a complex process. But we want you to find hope after today's episode. If you are someone who struggles with weight loss, who is obese, we want you to find hope, because obesity is not just, as Elder Henry has said, we have obesity that can also be spiritual obesity, right? So we want to give you some encouragement and things to do to actually help. So I'm going to start at first by talking to you a little bit about your diet. So for those who have checked their BMI already and you're saying, but I really don't look that large, and based on my height and so forth, I'm not, but when you check your BMI, you come up like, oh, I'm overweight. So you're not at level 1 of obesity, but you're actually overweight. This is where you start now to look at what you're eating. Get educated in terms of the food that you're eating. Look at the amount of nutrients you're taking in versus the activities that you are doing. You want to make sure you eat healthy meals. You want to stay active. You want to pay attention to your diet. And for those who are already diagnosed with obesity, you need to be a little bit more conscious of what you eat. Because as I talked about before, it takes 8 to 12 hours just to burn a few calories. So we want to be mindful of that, because we know that that does play a role. But when it comes to exercise, my next thing, we want to also exercise. And it doesn't matter your limitation. You can do chair exercises. An exercise that I recommend to patients all the time is swimming. You don't feel your body weight. And it is not necessarily because of your body weight, but you have persons who have injuries that they're unable to do certain exercises. When you put them in the pool and you provide them with support device for them to float, you can do so much more, and you actually don't feel it. You'll eventually feel tired when you come out, but whilst you're in the water, you basically don't feel it. So that's a very good way to exercise, especially if you're struggling with weight gain. The important thing about this, though, is that you have to be consistent for it to be effective. And for those that have genetic factors or other things, that can be looked at in a different level individually for each one to be able to know how to deal with it. A big thing that I know that persons who are obese or overweight or struggle with maintaining their weight is being able to have that willpower to make the decision to exercise, to eat healthy, to stay positive, and to be encouraged. Willpower. Willpower is like a muscle. Yeah. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So you have to be consistent. And we're going to give you some prescriptions shortly to help you to gain that willpower. We know that behavioral counseling, a lot of persons grew up in families where they weren't really supported emotionally, and for some of them, they went through a phase of depression. They slept a lot, or they just consumed foods to try to satisfy their feelings and to feel better. So we know that there are behavioral factors that are also related to increased weight gain or to be overweight or obese. So we want you to seek counseling. If you know that I'm talking to you today and you are struggling with some emotional things, some childhood memories, or even relationships that you have had where individuals did not actually allow you to feel a part of, I want you to get that help to work through that, and that will give you that motivation that you need. But now we're going to switch over to the prescription, and I'm going to ask you to get your pen and paper, because this is very important. We're going to be getting some prescriptions that you can't get anywhere else except on this program today. And Elder Theodore Henry is going to help us with those prescriptions. So there are some key things, because as you know, it depends on conditions. You have to get certain types of drugs. So we have some key things that we want you to use during this time if you are someone who is overweight or obese, because we understand that there's certain things that you experience. Some of the symptoms, the side effects are like failure and encouragement. Elder Henry, what would you prescribe for individuals who have this constant feeling of failure and lack encouragement?
All right, the first thing I would mention, and this is a small verse. Now, I'm a big believer in context.
Yes.
So usually I wouldn't go for a small verse, but I deliberately chose a tiny verse.
Okay.
It's Proverbs 16, verse 3, and it says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." It sounds simple on the face level, but let me just say this. You have to decide that you want to do something about this, yes? But you know yourself, don't it? We know ourselves. We
Yes.
know that we don't have any discipline. We know that we don't like hard things.
Yes.
Now, imagine you had someone taking this journey with you, walking the journey. Now, most people really do well with a physical trainer when they're trying to approach the thing. And it comes not just with the physicality, but it comes with diet and all of that. Now, imagine God being your physical trainer, right? The trainer that is there when you inadvertently fall. You slip back, maybe you call them the next day and you're like, yesterday was a rough day at work. I mean, there was the Ben & Jerry's or the Haagen-Dazs in the fridge, and I mean, it's a 5-ounce tub, and I ate it all. What does the trainer say? You're fired! No, the trainer says we try again tomorrow. No, if it was you alone, you'd have stopped right there, so don't it?
Right.
But the trainer says we try again tomorrow. And on top of that, the trainer establishes a pattern of behavior to which you need to keep. That's why this verse is so wonderful to me.
So, I like that. So it kind of tells me that this particular prescription for people who have this feeling of failure and lack of encouragement, this sounds like it's something that they need to be taken in what form? Is it by prayer, meditation? How often? Because, I mean, this seems like you can't go without a day's medication.
Take it every day. Remind yourself that God is my trainer. Right?
Yes.
Remind him that I have committed this journey to him. Take it every day. Means you need to read it
Yes.
and you need to contact him.
Yes.
What kind of training are you going to have if you don't actually call them? And then on top of it, so I don't know what form we're going to put that in. Is that a pill or is that a cream?
Well, we can just say pray and let them decide.
All right. So pray about it. But then for the encouragement, I want you to create an affirmation. You see how the verse is small? Every time you feel like you're a failure, every time you feel like you need encouragement, you need to respond to yourself.
Yes.
You see how this verse small? Proverbs 16 verse 3. My plans are committed to the Lord, and he's going to establish my path.
Boy, that sounds like it's 2 forms we have to give them in. That sounds like they need an inhaler. Persons with asthma, they have to take a puff.
Right,
Yes, that affirmation. It's
Deep
going to be
breath
like
in.
that inhaler that I need to take a puff. No, we also know that they experience depression. Do you have anything for the depression?
All right. I'm looking through my passages here. Why do you feel depressed? Or I'm sure there are many reasons why people feel depressed. It may be from the same failure, the same lack of encouragement, and I just feel held down by their failures. Like I can't go again today.
It sounds like them just must increase the dose of the same medication.
Yeah.
Just increase the dose whenever that comes on.
Yeah, but I want to add something to this. When you increase that dose, remember that God is your trainer, right? I want you to look at Psalms 37, 23 to 24, right? And whatever has caused you to lapse into this, failures, disappointments, troubles, look at 23 that says, again, like the Proverbs verse said, the Lord makes firm the steps of those who delight in him. But catch this part now. Though he or she, though they may stumble, they will not fall, for the Lord upholds them with his hand. Doc, I'm here thinking, and I'm like, I don't know how many people think God cares about their weight struggle. Sometimes we kind of box God as in he only cares about my spiritual life. He doesn't care that I'm struggling with these things. But right here, the psalmist tells us that you may stumble on all of your journeys.
Yes.
But God is with you when you delight in him, and he will uphold you.
Yes.
He will keep you going.
So he'll take you out of that depressive mode that will get you to start to get back to that routine that will get you to the health and the weight that you want.
And I have experienced depression. Sometimes it's not taking you out immediately, like popping up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yes.
Sometimes he gives you the strength to go through it.
Yes.
So that you heal
Yes.
and you learn from it.
Yes.
Yes. He establishes your paths.
And they should take that how again, Elder Henry?
You need to take that 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
3 times a day. In fact, if you could take it hourly,
Oh,
That
really?
would be good.
That would be good.
Because depression has a way of sneaking up
Yes.
and whispering to you,
Yes.
don't it?
So it's like a preventative kind of medication. Yes, yes, yes. So we only have 2 more prescriptions. So I hope you're writing. I hope you're writing. So these persons also sometimes have anxiety, you know, like when they go into a crowd or a room, or as you say, you're going to a store to purchase something and everybody look at you. You know, they probably, you know, they feel a little out of way going out to do certain activities in crowd. So what would you prescribe for the anxiety?
Let me look at this one now. Now, we're finding a lot of these in the Psalms and in the Proverbs. Now, I'm going to read a passage to you and tell me if it's so it go for real. Psalms 139, verse 14. David is writing, and he says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Now, I know because I am muscular and I am a good fighter that you love me, Lord.
Whoa.
That doesn't sound biblical.
Yeah.
At least piece of it sounds
Piece of
biblical.
it,
But then I hitch on something at the end. There was no contingency to whether God loves us or not, you know. There was no contingency to whether we're valuable or not, you know, doc. Right? David said, simple, I praise you because you made me fearful and wonderful. Now, mind you, let me hasten to say that David was not saying that everything about me is perfect.
Yes.
It wasn't about him. But remember how we have based all your prescriptions in the work of the Lord so far?
Yes.
David was saying God's works are good. And Philippians 1 verse 6 reminds us that he who started this good work in you
Yes.
is faithful to complete it. So now you can say, despite the fact that I am not where I want to be on my journey, God values me.
Yes,
He
yes.
loves me. He made me. And his works in my life
Yes.
are fearful and wonderful.
You know, that just kind of wraps it up for us because, you know, when we think about the courage that they would need, I think that just takes in everything. So I think that one should be in the form of an inhaler that they have to take frequent puffs because, you know, we don't want them to experience anxiety a lot because, you know, we have a lot of other things that can ensue from that. And we're wrapping up because we know we have a few minutes and we have the prayer to go into. But we want you to be mindful of these prescriptions because I can't give you a pill for how you feel whenever you get discouraged. I can't give you a pill when you get depressed to change how you feel, right? We can suppress some symptoms, but it can't change what happens in the mind. And we want you to know that God loves you and that you can find strength in His Word and you can see yourself in the Bible. Now, we're going to go for a quick break. We want you to listen to this song. And we prepare for prayer as we go. In the meantime, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be right back.
The following medications are meant to treat the diagnosis intended upon dispensing. Please note, many side effects of medications may not be reported. Side effects can occur when commencing, decreasing or increasing dosages, or ending a drug or medication regimen. Side effects may also lead to non-compliance with prescribed treatment. The following side effects are noted: love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you experience any of the reactions, please consult your physician immediately for medication adjustments.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of our program. And at this point, we're going to break for a song. In the meantime, we want you to type your prayer request. If you fear that you may have metabolic syndrome, if you know that you have metabolic syndrome, if you fear that you are not taking care of your health and you do have a summer parlor that is allowing you to put on some additional pounds, at this time we want to take that time to pray for you. So go ahead and post those prayer requests in the chat as we take this break for a song.
Carousel, when the doctor shook his head and said, she's gone. You could feel the mother's heartbreak, you could hear them crying more. Their little girl was only 12 years old. And somewhere in the distance, outlined against the sun, there came a man on a mission from the throne. Well, I said, look, somebody's coming, but what they didn't know, it was the promise coming down that dusty road. Oh, there's a promise coming down that dusty road, and from his holy hand, healing virtue flows. He's got the key to what you need, death and hell he will defeat. Oh, there's a promise coming down that dusty road. That turned to mock him when Jesus did speak. He said, your daughter's not dead, she's just asleep. And then he turned to the unbelievers and he told them all, go home. He said, you leave me and death alone. And then laid his hand upon the child. He looked death right in the eye. He said, all power in heaven and earth, it belongs to me. And with a voice that sounds like thunder, he hurled at asunder. And he said, my child, rise and be healed. For there's a promise coming down that dusty road. Oh yeah, and with his holy hand, healing virtue flows. He's got the key to what you need, death and hell he will defeat. Oh, there's a promise coming down that dusty road. Well, your dusty road, and from his holy hand, healing virtue flows. He's got the key to what you need, death and hell he will defeat. Oh, there's a promise coming down that dusty road. He's got the key to what you need, death and hell he will defeat. Oh, there's a promise coming down your dusty road. Oh, there's a promise coming down your dusty road.
Let's pray. Our dear, loving Father, thank you for this day and your love and mercy. Thank you for bringing us here to share about health and your words. Thank you for those watching online. Thank you for giving us information to use to help our bodies to be better for you. For those with obesity and problems with anger and anxiety, Lord, help them to stay focused. So every time they see themselves, they not see a failure, but someone who can be better with God in the lead. Continue to help them to learn more and give of best to you in service is our prayer and asking in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for joining us on It's All Connected. I hope that you are encouraged. I hope that you are encouraged enough to like, subscribe, and share this week's episode and to be back with us next week. I want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. For those who came in late, you can go back and rewatch this clip. Remember to always post your prayer requests in the chat. I want to thank those who are hearing impaired who joined us today. I hope that this program is meaningful for you. I want to thank the production team of East Jamaica Conference who we couldn't have done this without their help. And then my co-host, Elder Theodore Henry and Pastor Morgan. I could not have done this without you. It was wonderful to have you here, and I know that you'll be with us again. Both of you will be with us again for more episodes. So, friends, I just want to remind you that it's all connected, and we want you to be able to embrace the hearing impaired community. So, as a team, we're going to do the sign language as we say goodbye from It's All Connected. So, let's go together, guys. It's all connected.
You are my Savior, the true Redeemer, the one who reigns over land and all the sea. All the sea. We bow before you like no one, 'cause you're the one who gives me life and liberty. And no words can express just how great you are, and no song cannot say just how mighty you are. Say glory, glory to you, Lord. Heaven and earth and angels sing. We give you the honor and the praise. Say you're the one who knows my name. Lord, we stand in awe of you. Lord, we praise you, yes we do. You are my King forevermore. Say you're the one who opens doors. You're my King, oh Lord. You're my King, yes God. You're my King. Sovereign ruler, besides no other. When you speak, things are done and come to pass. We give you honor, 'cause you are a master. Lord, you show me the way to live this life, and no words can express just how great you are, and no song cannot say just how mighty you are. Glory, glory to you, Lord. Heaven and earth and angels sing. We give you the honor and the praise. See, you're the God who knows my name. Lord, we stand in awe of you. Lord, we praise you, yes we do. You are my King forevermore. See, you're the one who opens doors. You're my King, oh Lord. You're my King, yes God. You're my King. Say glory, glory to you, Lord. Heaven and earth and angels sing. We give you the honor and the praise. Say you're the God who knows my name. Lord, we stand in awe of you. Lord, we praise you, yes we do. You are my King forevermore. Say you're the one who opens doors. You're my King, oh Lord. You're my King, yes God. You're my King. Say you're my